What's up, everyone? It has been a while since I have last recorded a podcast. If someone were to ask me, what is the one ticker you would trade for the rest of your life? My answer is TQQQ. TQQQ is a leverage ETF. The reason why I pick TQQQ is because it's really volatile. So let's go ahead and navigate to our stock analysis website. And this is probably my favorite website to do research upon. Like before I had Yahoo Finance, but I felt like recently with Yahoo Finance, they incorporated too many ads, and sometimes it takes a long time to load content. So this version I'm using is actually a paid version. Free version of stock analysis works just as fine. I figure it's only like $7 a month or something. It's pretty cheap. But yeah, right now, stock analysis is by far my favorite website to use for researching purpose. In our overview tab, TQQQ has over 31 billion in assets. The expense ratio, 0.82%, is slightly more than most index funds. It's probably cheaper than most mutual funds. But this is a ticker I would highly recommend you trading short term, also good for long term, which I will cover in a few minutes. They currently have over 533 million shares outstanding. They pay a dividend, trailing 12 month, 39 cents. Dividend yield, 0.75%. This is annualized. 0.75% is annualized. And their last ex-dividend date was on September 24th, 2025. They pay out these dividends quarterly. Now, as far as trading purpose, the dividends doesn't really matter. Dividends only matter if someone's planning to hold to it long term or so. Then okay, dividends helps. As far as trading is concerned, dividend is not really a factor for me to consider. 52-week low was at $17.50. 52 weeks high was at $60.69. Now, this is why I like trading TQQQ. Check out the high beta here, 3.49. That's extremely high compared to most stocks. In fact, if you compare it to, let's say, SPY, for example, SPY itself probably has closer to a 1 beta. Let's look at the regular NASDAQ. So even for the triple Qs, has a 1.18 beta. So going back to TQQQ, it has 122 holdings. Inception date since February 9th, 2010. And towards the bottom here, we have the performances. The past month, it was about negative 0.08%. We have a 33.15% year to date, which is pretty good. If someone's planning to hold this long term, 33% beats the index. It definitely beats S&P 500. It definitely beats NASDAQ 100. It beats Dow Jones. It beats the small caps. So right now, TQQQ, I believe, has the best performances within the year to date. Looking at it from 1 year standpoint, TQQQ has 18.25% return. From a 5-year standpoint, we're looking at 20.80%. 10-year returns, 36.73%. Since inception, we have 42.36%. Keep in mind that these are just the average annual return. This is not a cumulative return figures. It's an average annual return. Okay? So there's a difference between cumulative and annualized. And if some of you guys don't know what it means, I will cover that in my next video. All right, let's move on to the next tab. This is also important. Holdings. As I mentioned earlier, TQQQ has 122 holdings. Now, most of these comes from the technology sector. But we have other stock that comes from consumer discretionary, communication services, consumer staples, industrials, healthcare also make a small percentage of it. And if we were to scroll down, the top 11 holdings appears to be NASDAQ 100 index swap. This is just a contract that allows the issuer to basically mimic the 3x performance of the leverage ETF without actually buying, let's say, many shares of Nvidia, Apple, or Microsoft. They have these swap that mimics the 3x leverage. In fact, let me go back to the overview to actually cover What is TQQQs? I'm sure most of you probably heard of TQQQs by now, but just in case if you haven't heard it, TQQQ is issued by ProShares. It's an exchange-traded fund that is based on the NASDAQ 100 index. The fund provides 3x leverage exposure to a modified market cap weighted index tracking 100 of the largest non-financial firms listed on NASDAQ. TQQQ was launched on February 9th, 2010 and is issued by ProShares. 3x leverage is from a daily reset standpoint. 3x leverage doesn't mean, hey, whatever the NASDAQ is or was 3 years ago, it should be 3x from the 3 years period. That's not what 3x leverage implies. 3x leverage just means that it mimics Triple Q's ticker on a daily basis, not on the overall performance. And I will cover this in a separate video. Under holdings, besides the index swaps, the first ticker we have is NVIDIA. I'm sure everyone heard of NVIDIA by now. It's the leading computer graphic chips, also AI chips, AI integration. They have all of these partnership with various companies. NVIDIA, I believe, is a $1 trillion company. So is Apple, Microsoft, and just a couple more that made it to the $1 trillion club. Currently, for TQQQs, NVIDIA has a 5.81%. The next one is Apple, which has a 5.51%, followed by Microsoft, 4.78%, and then Broadcom, 3.58%. Amazon, and there's a whole bunch of them. But the ones that I normally look at are the top 10, and these are great companies to own, whether it's short-term trading, you're trading options or holding it long-term. So that's actually the reason why I rarely lose sleep when I have money invested in TQQQs. It has all of these AAA quality names. It's really hard to beat that. Okay, next, let's jump over to the dividends. As I mentioned earlier, dividends doesn't really play a role for swing trading for me. But if some of you prefer to hold TQQQs in a longer time frame, they also pay dividends. So if you look back here, their last ex-dividend date was on September 24th, 2025. They paid out 0.04891 cents per share. The record date was on September 2025. Payout date was on September 30th, 2025. So in order for you to have qualified for this dividend, as long as you own the shares, meaning you bought the shares before the ex-dividend date, let's say if you purchased this on September 23rd, that means you have qualified to receive the dividends of which they paid out on September 30th. If you purchased TQQQs on the ex-dividend date, September 24th, you are not qualified for a payout on September 30th. So whenever the next dividend comes, make sure that you purchase some TQQQ shares before the ex-dividend date to qualify for dividends, okay? And it looks like they pay out quarterly. Dividend growth, negative 17.06%. It looks like they're shrinking. Also, it's possible they have a stock split as well. So with a stock split, it's possible that they may have contributed to this negative dividend growth, right? TQQQ had a 2-for-1 split. At one point, they were priced over $120 a share, but now they're close to like $52.33. So yeah, that's one benefit of owning TQQQs. You're also qualified for dividends. Okay, now normally for charts and history, even though stock analysis has the history, I find it kind of cumbersome to look at the history from stock analysis, same as the chart. Chart works okay. A lot of times I like to flip over to TradingView. I would say when it comes to stock analysis, ticker scanner, fundamentals, performances, stock analysis has an upper hand compared to TradingView. TradingView really shines when it comes to their charting. It's second to none, believe me. I've tried many different UIs, including Charles Schwab, Fidelity, Tasty Trade, Webull. None of them come close to TradingView, but that's not what this video is about. The video is not about me promoting TradingView. I'm using TradingView to illustrate where TQQQs is at currently. And notice I have some of these resistant or support level line drew with the blue color mark here. Sometimes I like to draw some of these where I would kind of speculate and see how much farther can TQQQ drops. Based on my analysis, I said maybe it could go below $50 at $49.90. That's a possibility. Based on today's closing, it looks like this could be a good support. You know, sometimes when I look at it from a daily chart standpoint, it's not enough. I flip over to my weekly, and weekly shows a strong support, right? Not only did it hover around $52.33 this week, it also happened on December 8th, as well as a couple weeks ago, November 11th, November 3rd, and October 20th. See how there's like a long bottom wick? To me, it shows that buyers step in, they purchase TQQQ. So it's very possible tomorrow, TQQQs may continue to go higher. You know, just based on the recent historical data, we have long bottom candle wicks that pushes up to the upside. So this is what I normally like to do with TradingView, is to analyze and predict what I think the price is going to go to. So assuming if TQQQ reverses, I'm thinking the next resistance level is at $56.83. Now, if TQQQ reverses and continue to climb up, I think the next take profit would be $56.83, because at this level, TQQQ hit this level on December 8th, December 1st, as well as November 10th. Now, this is at a weekly period. Let's look at the monthly period, which I also look at, but monthly is not really my main factor. Even in the monthly chart, the RSI is not at the overbought level yet. When it's over 70, it's considered overbought. That's where you would have to be careful. So from a monthly standpoint, it looks good. If we go back to the weekly standpoint, it looks even better. The weekly RSI is sitting at 55.56. Let's zoom in on the daily level. The daily level looks even better at 44.93 RSI. And then 4 hours, I looked at this sometimes. It gives me the after hours. After hour looks like it's still more or less the same as what occurred from today. RSI is even lower, 37.18. Oh, I have to close out these ads. That's one of the disadvantages with the free version. All right, at the 1 hour level, RSI is sitting at a 44.28. So to me, looking at it from a daily level, 4 hours, daily, weekly, and monthly, RSI does not appear to be overbought. If anything, it's oversold. It's more in the oversold territory, which makes me more comfortable accumulating more and more shares of TQQQs. So currently, I have position in TQQQs. I also sold one put option. I sold one cover call that expired this Friday. So no matter how I look at it, regardless of which ways TQQQs move, I'll make money in one of the options or the stocks as well. Here's another reason why I like flipping TQQQs. Volume is extremely high. Like even if you look at today's volume, 105 million. Yesterday was 98 million. And if you look at some of these larger volumes, here we have here on November 18th, we have over 267 million traded. Another thing I look at is not just the volume. I also look at the historical splits. You know, did we have any kind of splits? So here we have one on November 20th. That's a 2-for-1 split. 2-for-1 split means when you own one share, now you have two shares. So I look for these split. Some people refer to it as forward split. As long as it has a regular split or forward split, then I'm fine with it. Right? That's a sign that the stock is doing well. A lot of time they will drive the price down by having these forward split or just split. Here's another split they had back in January 13th of 2022. 2-for-1 split. Another split back in January 21st, 2021. 2-for-1 split. So when I see splits, that's a good sign. Now, when I see reverse split will look like 1/2 or 1-for-2. That's when the companies, they're normally in trouble. Normally, when a ticker has a reverse split, that shows they're in financial trouble. A lot of time, their stock price is probably close to $1. And according to NASDAQ or whatever market they're listed on, they need the stock price to be listed by $1 or more. If it gets listed at $1 or lower for consecutive days or under $1 for too long, then they're at risk of getting delisted. So that's actually the reason why some company needed to do a reverse split to ensure their ticker is tradable within the stock market. So there's slight differences between like NASDAQ and New York Stock Exchange. There are some slight differences, and I will probably cover that in another video. But the main focus for this video is to make sure that when I'm trading tickers, there is no sign of reverse split. Having regular splits or just forward splits, they're fine with me. All right, guys, so I just pulled up a ticker, BULZ, Microsector, So Active, FANG, and Innovation 3X Leverage ETN. Not an ETF, is an ETN. So this one has a split 1 for 10. That means for every 10 shares you own for BULZ ticker, you end up having 1 share when that was converted on October 31st, 2022. So this is an example of a reverse split. So 1 divided by 10 is 0.1. That's a reverse split. Reverse split means when you take 1 divided by 10, the number is less than 1, is a reverse. If you do the opposite, 10 for 1, which is also saying 10 divided by 1, you have a 10. That's a whole number. That's a forward split, or just split itself. So that's one thing I look for is when I'm looking at tickers, I make sure that there's no sign of reverse split. When I see reverse split, that's a red concern. I would not flip that because if it reaches a bear market, there is a high chance this could have a reverse split. And a reverse split is a turnoff for many traders, especially long terms, right? A lot of time I like to get in on tickers where it attracts long-term traders because that's how the prices goes up of any stocks. You need to have people holding to the stock long enough for you to at least capitalize on profit. You know, TQQQ has options, which makes it more flexible for option plays. So whether I'm trading the TQQQ's shares or options, that's actually one of the reasons why I like TQQQ. Really liquid, high volume. TQQQ's, unlike the other leverage ETF, allows me to trade 24/6. The only day that's not tradable is Saturday. So if I want to trade it after, let's say, stock market hours, anywhere from 4 o'clock to the next morning is tradable. A lot of times, you know, I'll set limit orders and say, sell TQQQs at X price, buy TQQQs at X price. On certain nights, my phone goes off, alerts me. And a lot of time when I buy, I would buy in small increment, maybe like 25 shares or 50 shares at once, because it's impossible for me to know what's the lowest price or what's the best price to sell it for. You know, the only thing to do is to dollar cost average, which I will cover in another video of how I perform dollar cost average. So yeah, this is the list on my left-hand side from Tasty Trades, the list of ETF that are tradable 24 hours. And I think TQQQ, I believe this is the only leverage ETF on the list. Now I'm able to trade NASDAQ, QQQs, SPY, but they're very expensive. Buying 1 share of QQQs is already at $610 and is not as volatile as TQQQs. Okay, next, let's review some of my trades for TQQQs. TQQQ is not something that I trade every day. So right now, I started trading TQQQs on July 25th of 2024. And on some days I would trade it. I may hold it for days, weeks. I may do day trading. And it looks pretty consistent, right? Now, on November 20th, you will notice a dip. This dip is not so much a true dip. What happened was TQQQ had a split. Because it had a split, the price was priced higher before November 20th. On November 20th, they had a split. So that's where the number got adjusted. And see how the next day, the number actually went back up to what I was at earlier. So this is not really a big dip. It's more so of a split that kind of affected the chart. But basically, my TQQQ's histories, I have a 96.20% overall. Profit factor is 2.04. My day win is 96.20%. Let's go ahead and look at some of these metrics. So the one thing I like about TradeZilla is the reporting. This website probably offers the most comprehensive reports of every reporting UI I've tried so far. I give you some nice stats. So apparently the largest losing day I had was $3,759. Largest profitable day is $3,879. Let's look at some overview. Best month was in July 2025. I had over $4.6 thousand. Lowest month was a negative $10. Hey, that's not bad at all. That's the worst month I had with TQQQ. Was a negative $10.36. Average per month is $1,106. Total commissions. Oh wow, I spent close to $404. Total fees $123. My largest profit off a trade was $6,946. Largest loss $6,273. Here we go. Average hold time, all trades, 1 day and 16 hours, 11 minutes. So it seems like I like holding it overnight. So let's look at day and time. So earlier when I started trading TQQQs, I believe it was on Fidelity, and Fidelity doesn't capture the exact timestamp. So some of these numbers may be skewed. I switched to Tasty Trade sometime this year. I believe early February-ish. And that's where it has the correct timestamp. I'm kind of taking these metrics with a grain of salt because it's not the exact time. But I'm sure over time, if I continue to use Tasty Trade, these times should be more accurate as time passes. So here we go. So apparently, if I hold it over 4 hours, I actually have a bigger net profit of $8,000. When I held it for less than 1 or 2 minutes, they're in double digits. Hold it for 2 to 5 minutes, about $160. So this website is pretty cool. It gives you various stats, and it looks like when I'm holding it over 4 hours, I trade in a bigger volume size. When I hold it for shorter durations, I actually trade less, which makes sense. Now, for the month of December, I currently profit over $1,000. And let's go ahead and look at the biggest one for this month. Okay, so December 11th appears to be the biggest dollar amount. When I break it down by the day, there's a column called net ROI, return on investment. It breaks it down by percentages. So from looking at it, it looks like I take small percentages here and there. So right here, I have one at 241 with a 1.42 net ROI. I have another one here. I close out TQQQs with $124 profit, 1.22% net ROI. Now we could zoom this in further by clicking on View Details. I will probably create a separate video to cover TradeZella and why I went with TradeZella over the several trading UI platform out there. So this screen gives me a nice view on my journal entries, but it's basically for stocks. So December 12th, which was last Friday, I had 2 trades and I made $5 profit and loss. So this $5 probably came from cover calls or cash secure puts I sold, not so much from trading the shares. That's why the number is not as big. Normally for swing trading, depending on how much money I've risked. Right now I have money on other tickers, not necessarily TQQQs, but one of my strategies for next year is to focus more on TQQQs. Based on my history, I have a consistent profit. It doesn't give me a crazy explosion like call option on a certain ticker, but it gives me like a nice consistent profit where I don't really lose sleep over it. So like this guy here on December 11th, I had $413 gross profit and losses. December 10th, $122. December 9th, make $25. $25 probably from cover calls or cash secure put. So December 8th, I purchased some shares or options, but I did not close it out. That's what this represents. December 7th, I made $20, probably cover calls again. Is TQQQ good for long-term investment? Well, maybe. A lot of articles I've read on Reddit, people on YouTube, some people argue it's not good. Other people argue it's great for long-term. Well, let's plug it in. Let's put in TQQQ, right? And let's just compare this with an index fund. Let's compare with its counterpart, NASDAQ 100, right? So TQQQ is represented in the blue color line. NASDAQ 100, QQQ, is represented by the orange color line, okay? If we were to compare it at the 1 month period, NASDAQ QQQ leads TQQQ slightly, okay? Let's look at the 3-month period. 3-month period, TQQQs outperform triple Qs. Right, 5.6% versus 3.5%. Now, this is assuming you held it for 3-month period. This is like a swing trader dream come true. You could potentially buy it when the RSI at a certain level, EMA, SMA, MACD, whatever moving averages that you prefer. You could potentially get it at the low, sell it when it goes up to peak, do the same thing, rinse and repeat. Okay. So there's not much of a difference even with the 3-month. Let's look at it from a 6-month standpoint. 6-month TQQQs has a 44% return. That's insane. That's assuming you just held onto it without even swing trading it at all. That's a 44% return compared to its counterpart, NASDAQ 100, 16%. Okay, so that's not really long term. Right? Some of you may argue, well, let's look at year to date. Year to date, again, TQQQ's performance outshine NASDAQ 100, 33% versus 20%. Okay, let's look at that 1 year mark. 1 year mark looks kind of similar, but TQQQ looks like slightly above triple Qs. Okay, let's look at 3 years. So 3 years, I would say, is considered long term. Anything over 1 year is considered long term. So if you were to hold this ticker for 3 years without even trading at all, you're looking at 456% return compared to its counterpart, 125% return. Well, based on math here, if you were to hold it long term for 3 years, you still outperform triple Qs. Let's look at 5 years. 5 years, okay, 5 years, TQQQ's leverage ETF has 157% return. Triple Q has 105% return. So 5-year return and still beat that. Okay. Let's look at the 10-year return. 10-year return, that's what it really matters the most. If someone's talking about long term, I would think 10 years is considered long term enough to the point where TQQQ has a 2,185% return. That is crazy compared to its counterpart, triple Q's 487% return. That is crazy. I'm just talking about holding it long term. If someone's skilled at swing trading, day trading, you could potentially make more, a lot more than the 2,185% return. Okay. Let's look at max. So the max period only makes sense if both of them compare the same starting point, which it does. Because I know one of them was issued first than the others. Triple Q was probably issued first. If we were to compare the max life cycle of these two tickers, where they both exist, you're looking at a 25,000+ % return with the TQQQ by holding it long term. Now, if someone's skilled at swing trading, you could trade this up and down and make more than 25,000% return. Regardless, 25,000% return is an excellent number to have. Its counterpart, triple Q's, only has 1,500% return, which is good, but not great compared to TQQQ's. So, there's pros and cons. There's a high drawdowns, really volatile for TQQQs. If some of you guys don't mind using a portion of your portfolio in TQQQs, it's probably not going to give you a heart attack. But for some of you that may have millions of dollars in your portfolio and all you have is on TQQQs, that shit could give you a heart attack. So I understand where both sides are coming from. Now, let's look at it from an all-period standpoint. So the all-period is not a fair comparison, right? Triple Q started back in March 10th, 1999. The TQQQs didn't really exist up until maybe 2010 or so. But still, regardless of triple Qs, NASDAQ 100 started first, then the leverage ETF. Leverage ETF actually caught up. So if we were to compare the all-period, where triple Qs was issued first, and TQQQ was issued back in 2010 or so, you're still looking at 25,000+%, which is insane. And if some of you don't like looking at charts, we have this table here to look at too, and which I could also download to Excel spreadsheet, pass it into SQL Management Studio and do further analysis if I wanted to. But using stock analysis is great for performance comparison, returns, watch lists. If you have holdings, you could also add it to your holdings list. So that's actually the main reason why I use stock analysis. Anything besides charting, I use stock analysis. for TQQQs. Now, TQQQs is not the only leveraged ETF that I trade. Stick around for my next video. I will show you guys my top 5 leveraged ETF. Now, I'm sure people make great money holding leveraged ETF for long terms, but I feel like for most people, I would say, at least based on what I've read, based on the consensus, it appears that most people trade TQQQs, and it's actually recommended to not hold it long term according to the issuer. Although there are people on YouTube or Reddit that actually holds TQQQs long term. So guys, comment below whether you traded TQQQs, you have it in your long-term investment portfolio, or maybe you trade other leveraged ETF. All right, guys, that's all I have. Talk to you guys next time. Peace.